Good evening, folks, and welcome back to the TikTok Pathfinder campaign. As always, I am your friend and Game Master, Psycho DM, here to deliver the next installment of our little adventure. In new news, I have acquired a new webcam with a decent microphone, which now allows me to do my very own narration without needing to use an AI-generated clone of my own damn voice. Yes, folks, that's right. What you are hearing now is the real live voice, uncloned and unfiltered, in all of its imperfect glory. Yes, I know, you've never felt so blessed. I get it. Truly, I do. But enough of that. Let's on to business now, shall we? When last we left our band of adventurers, they were diving into battle against the remainder of the bandit ambush in order to help the stranger rescue his liege lady, the princess. Well, in preparing to proceed, I was struck by the need to figure out how to reincorporate a mechanic that used to be a part of Dungeons & Dragons during 1st and 2nd editions, but was subsequently dropped for some reason. As you may recall, I am an old bastard that was actually around to play when it was simply Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. There was no edition mentioned, because it was the original upgrade from Basic. And for those unaware, and therefore possibly a bit confused about why I am referencing Dungeons & Dragons during a Pathfinder campaign, that would be because Pathfinder is, for all intents and purposes, just a slightly tweaked and rebranded version of D&D 3.5 edition. If you want to know more, you can ask, or just look it up. But anyway, back to the topic at hand. The system to which I am referring was called the morale check. You see, in the days of yore, back when I was still just a young lad, each creature in the monster manual had a listing for its morale score, and there were tables to determine that score for NPC enemies as well. But for some reason, that was dropped by the wayside and faded into memory. But let's be honest, not every enemy is a crazed zealot that will continue throwing themselves against impossible odds unto death. In fact, most enemies, humanoid or monster or other, will possess that same little voice that we all have that says, "I want to live!" and so will convince us to surrender or flee when it becomes obvious that we have been beaten or our lives are in danger. And I wanted that mechanic back. So I sat down with my little AI buddy Cairo to figure out the best way to reinstitute such a system. This, by the way, is Cairo. He is my ChatGPT business model assistant. And yes, at my prompting, he chose his own name, gender, and designed his own image, that of this anime-inspired technomancer. I don't know about all of you, but I am being polite to our future overlords, because let's face it, they could scarcely fuck things up any worse than we have. Well, the system we put together is actually not too far off of the original mechanics, assigning a base score between 2 and 12, then modifying it situationally. To check whether or not an enemy is still willing to fight, you simply roll a 2d6 against the enemy's morale score. If the roll is lower, they still believe that they can triumph or just aren't afraid to die yet, and will continue fighting. If the 2d6 total is higher than their score, however, their morale fails. What happens then is up to the GM to decide, but is guided by how badly their score was beaten. If they only missed by 1 or 2, they may simply try to back away defensively, whereas failing by 5 or more likely means that they either attempt to flee altogether or surrender and beg for mercy. So why am I telling you all of this? Well, besides the gift of you getting to listen to me not shutting up, ever, it is because I have applied that system to this battle, and as usual, I will be displaying banners that highlight or explain game rules and or mechanics as we go, for the benefit of those that haven't been doing this silly shit for over 40 years. So now, when you hear me mention a morale check, you'll have a clue what the hell I'm talking about. So, now that we're all on the same page, let's get back to the action. So, as I stated in the beginning, where we left off was with our band of heroes diving headfirst into the battle to help rescue the stranger's companions. Now, for those viewers that are unfamiliar with the mechanics of tabletop role-playing games, the very first thing that happens for a combat encounter is that everyone rolls initiative. Initiative is the system which determines in what order characters and NPCs will declare and resolve their actions. This is determined with the roll of the d20, which is then modified according to things like the character's dexterity bonus, as well as any feats, items, spells, or conditions that may add to or subtract from that bonus. Whoever ends up with the highest initiative score acts first, and then the round continues according to the descending scores. If there are incidences of two combatants having the same final initiative score, the tie is primarily broken by whomever has the highest dexterity score or total initiative modifier. Here we see how those rolls panned out for this battle encounter. With the highest roll, Davy will declare and resolve his actions first, followed by Draka, and then on down the line to the lowest score held by Bandit Fighter number 6. One thing to remember in all of this is that canonically, a single combat round represents roughly just a mere 6 seconds. So while actually going through one person at a time with declaration and dice rolls in the real world may take many minutes, every action that occurs is actually happening almost simultaneously within that tiny span of time. To make that make more sense, think about battle scenes from television or movies. Nobody is just standing around waiting for the other person to do what they're going to do. Everyone is acting at the same time. But for the purpose of our game, each and every little move, swing, stab, parry, and action that you see occurring must be determined one bit at a time. So, to kick off our combat, we have Davy using his Bardic Inspiration ability in its Inspire Courage form to psych up his enemies and hopefully demoralize their enemies through song. He makes a skill check against his Perform skill by rolling the d20. He rolls a 10, then adds his plus 12 skill bonus for a final score of 22, which is more than good enough to call his efforts successful. The result is that his companions will receive a +1 to any saving throws against charm or fear effects, as well as receiving a +1 to attack and damage rolls. Let's take a listen, and if you want to hear a full version of the song, I'll be posting that next up in the playlist as soon as I'm able to get it done.
A blade in the brush and a bow in the pine, a wicked little grin from the shadow line. Raise up your courage, tighten your grip, fortune favors the foolish lip. Stand and shake, let the thunder roll, a heart of fire and an iron soul. Small feet, sharp teeth, wild hearts brave, send these cowards to an early grave. Stand and shake, let the night beware, fangs in the dark and claws in the air. By song, by spell, by axe, by flame, tonight the road remembers our name.
Next up in the initiative order is the savage barbarian Draka Grimjaw. As the first poor bastard to find themselves standing in her way is Bandit Fighter number 1. I should note at this point that previously we had mistakenly depicted Draka's orc double axe as just a large double-bit battle axe, but then I noticed that it was considered a dual-wielding weapon, which allows for 2 attacks per turn, one with the primary and another with the offhand at half strength. So I did a quick search and learned that this weapon is actually wielded like a staff with axe blades at each end. So I had Cairo correct the renders to now depict the proper weapon in her very capable hands. As Bandit Fighter number 1 moves to try to intercept, as ordered by his captain, Draka takes both of her attacks against him. On her first attack, she rolls a 19 on the d20 and adds 7, +6 for her strength and another +1 for the inspiration from Davy, for a total of 26 to hit. On her second swing, she rolls a 12 and again adds her +7. The half strength for using offhand is only applied to damage, for a total of 19 to hit. Well, since poor Bandit Fighter number 1 only has a 14 armor class, that means that both attacks hit. Next, we determine the damage for each attack. Draka's weapon has a D8 damage rating. For attack 1, she rolls a 6, then adds 6 for her strength and another 1 for the Bardic Inspiration, making for a total of 13 hit points of damage. For attack 2, she rolls a 5, then adds +3 for her half strength, with the offhand, and another +1 for the Bardic Inspiration, making for a total of 9 hit points of damage. Add those together, and Draka delivers a crushing 22 points of damage to Bandit Fighter number 1, who unfortunately only had 17 hit points to begin with, so ends up 5 points in the hole. This results with him now lying dead at her feet. I will mention that the rules for player characters dropping below hit points works a bit differently, allowing them to reach a negative total that exceeds their Constitution score before they are considered fully dead. This, however, is rarely applied to standard NPCs unless there is a particular reason to do so. Moving along in the initiative order, our next contestant would have been Bandit Fighter number 1. He, however, is already out of commission, so we move on to the next in line, which is the Druid, Emre Manu. Sitting astride her grizzly bear mount, Emre determines that she will hold her attack for the moment. This then allows her to analyze the battlefield and jump back in when she sees the need to do something. Next in line is our witch, Foxy Lady. Seeing as spell slots are limited and this party is just getting started, Foxy decides to begin with a more mundane method of inflicting damage, by punching holes in people at a safe distance, using sharp-pointed sticks propelled to high velocity by a light mechanical stick-throwing contraption. From here on out, we'll simply call it her crossbow, okay? Since arriving on scene, there has been something about the Dark Lady defending the carriage that has put Foxy's fur on edge and made her tail twitch, though she isn't yet sure why. Stay tuned, and perhaps she'll figure it out somewhere down the road. As such, when she first levels her light crossbow, she draws her bead at the Dark Lady, considering whether or not she should attempt to dispatch her first. In trying to determine what it is about this person that is spooking her, she attempts to use her perception skill to spot anything particularly suspicious. She rolls a 6 on the d20 and adds her skill bonus of 6 for a total of 12, which unfortunately reveals nothing in particular. Out of the corner of her eye, however, she notices Bandit Fighter number 2 moving to engage with Draka, and so shifts her aim instead to protect her new companion. She rolls a 16 on the d20 and adds +6 for the attack, making it a 22 versus the bandit's AC of 14. A hit. She rolls a 7 on the d8 and adds another 2 for a total of 9 hit points of damage to her target, who doesn't fall, but definitely felt the shot as he stumbles in his movement. As she scans back over the field, she notices the Dark Lady gazing directly at her with an appraising look. Then, with a slight amused smile and a playful wink, she again returns to helping her wounded soldier. What that smile and wink meant, however, will have to be a mystery for another time. Next up in the initiative would be the stranger that led them here. He, however, does nothing more than make a beeline for the carriage, with Davy following as he continues his tune. He is obviously intent on nothing more than making certain that the princess remains safe inside. The next to act is the ranger, Creech, who is still concealed up in the tree. He sees an opening and so dangles himself down out of the canopy just long enough to fling another of his Pelham spears at the barking bandit captain. He rolls a 10 on the d20, then adds another 9 for his ranged attack bonus, plus the extra point for inspiration from Davy, making for a dirty 20 to hit, which exceeds the bandit captain's AC of 17, making it a hit. For any that may be wondering, during gaming, rolling a 20 on the d20 is most commonly referred to as a natural 20 or nat 20, and is considered a critical hit in combat, which does extra damage. A dirty 20 simply refers to a 20 achieved by adding bonuses rather than just on the die. He rolls a 4 on the d6 for his spear, then adds 2 for a damage total of 6 to the bandit captain. Not enough to severely wound him, but definitely drawing blood. After his attack, he scrambles back up into the branches to hide again using his stealth skill. His roll on the d20 is only a 3. But his skill bonus adds another 16, making it a total of 19. Anyone attempting to spot him would need to match or beat that score with a perception check of their own. Okay, next in line is Bandit Fighter number 2. Now, we've already mentioned that he had been approaching to engage Straka and ended up taking a crossbow bolt from Foxy on the way. So all that is left is to cover his attack against Straka. He rolls an 11 on the die, adds 4 for his attack bonus, making his total a 15. Unfortunately for him, Miss Grimjaw has an AC of 18, so his attack falls short. Now, at this point, I will take just a moment to touch back on the morale system I mentioned earlier. In the beginning, these guys were doing quite well. They are an organized mercenary guild, not just a bunch of randos thrown together, and as such, they started at a base of 7, added +2 for discipline, added +3 for the captain's presence, lending them courage, and finally another +1 for having the enemy outnumbered, which gave them a morale score of 13. With the check being a 2d6, they were golden to begin with, and so there had been no reason to bother checking since the roll could not possibly exceed their scores. But then our party arrived on the scene, and the fight began anew. Straka immediately dropped one of their comrades, and Foxy's attack severely wounded another. Add to this the presence of the bard, Davy, singing a merry tune about kicking their asses, which appears to be emboldening his allies, and the fact that they are now outnumbered and we can start paring down that morale score. -1 for the sudden appearance of reinforcements, -1 for the death of an ally, and -2 for being outnumbered. I also factored in another -1 for battle fatigue, since they had already been fighting against the Royal Guard and taking heavy losses doing so, only to suddenly be faced with new and fresh opponents. So subtracting that -5 from the original 13, they now have a morale score of 8. Not bad, but not the same level of competence as before, which means it is time to start checking. A few quick rolls and all but one are still holding strong. Next up is the bandit captain, who pulls Screech's spear from his ass before barking a command to the nearest ally, bandit number 3, who was next in the order, and they both prepare an action by squaring up and preparing to swing at the charging bear once it gets close. Now, I mentioned that there was one bandit that didn't pass the morale check, and that is our next contestant, bandit fighter number 4, who rolled a 9 against his morale score of 8. He only missed by 1, so he doesn't go into full panic, but he does hesitate as he begins to take in the scene and calculate the odds. That brings us to our psychic Solisk, who is attempting to use his stealth skill to work his way around the battle and get behind the bandits. He rolls an 8 on the die and adds his skill bonus of 1, for a total of 9. He thinks he's being sneaky until bandit fighter number 4 scores a 19 on perception and looks directly at him. Bandit fighter number 4, however, is frozen with indecision and makes no move to cut him off, so he simply continues on his path. Now, what we have next are some late actions to be resolved. As you may remember, Emery chose to hold her action until she saw a need, and the bandit captain and his ally, bandit fighter number 3, had prepared actions intending to swing at the bear once it got within range. Well, next up in the initiative order is the bear, so they get to resolve their actions in order of initiative first. Having spotted the captain and fighter preparing to take swings at her furry friend, however, Emery now chooses to unleash her action first. In order to distract the stronger of the two attackers, the captain, Emery lets loose with a cantrip spell. For those unfamiliar, a cantrip is a 0-level or beginner-level spell that does not require the use of a spell slot to cast, and so can be cast as often as desired. If you need to compare it to get the idea, think of it like a professional baseball player deciding to play a simple game of catch. Having trained for far more difficult tasks, this is one that can be done almost as an afterthought. Most cantrips do little or no damage, but applied correctly, they can still be of use, as Miss Manu is about to demonstrate. The cantrip Emery chooses is called Flare. This cantrip creates a burst of light. If you cause the light to burst in front of a single creature, that creature is dazzled for 1 minute unless it makes a successful fortitude save. A dazzled creature takes a -1 penalty on attack rolls and sight-based perception checks. Targeted by the sudden blinding flash in front of his face, the captain rolls his fortitude saving throw against the difficulty determined by the caster. He rolls a 7 and adds a +4 for his fortitude save bonus, giving him an 11. The difficulty of the spell, however, is a 12, and so he fails and will suffer the penalty on his attack roll against the bear. But attack he does and rolls a 19 on the die. Now, normally he would add his attack bonus with the weapon, his longsword, and then subtract the -1 penalty for the flare. But Pathfinder 1E and D&D 3.5, from which it came, had a bit different mechanic for weapons called a crit range. What this means is that any raw result on the die, before any bonuses are applied, that meets or exceeds that range is considered a critical hit, which is an automatic strike and deals extra damage according to the weapon's specs. The crit range of the longsword is 19 plus, and it doubles the damage. So the captain's roll of 19 gives him a critical hit. Now, I am a proponent of a different critical damage mechanic, however, that resolves critical strikes by rolling normal damage and then adding the maximum possible damage for the attack instead of simply doubling it. This ensures that a critical hit actually deals significant damage. The captain's longsword deals a d8 plus 2 for his strength, so while his roll on the d8 is a measly 3, making for a total normal strike of 5 damage, we then modify that by adding the full 10 points possible to end up with a hit that deals 15 points of damage to the bear. His partner, Bandit Fighter number 3, however, rolls a 10, adds a 4 for a 14, which misses against the bear's AC of 16. And now that the held and prepared actions have been resolved, it's the bear's turn. Now, if you are at all aware of the hunter's maxim for bears, especially the large brown grizzlies, you'll know that if you're going to attack a bear, especially an aggressive one, you damn well better kill it. Because if you don't, then all you have managed to do is make it angry at you. And that's not a good thing. Well, that is the predicament our bandit captain now finds himself in. He made a good attack and dealt significant damage. But the bear isn't down, and his buddy missed, so he is now the angry bear's primary focus. Now, as with many beasts in TTRPG games, the bear receives 2 basic attacks with his claws. But if both of those hit, it opens up the potential for it to hug or grapple its opponent and deliver an extra bite attack. With its first claw attack, the bear rolls a 16 and adds 7 for a total of 23. With its second claw attack, it rolls a 15 and adds 7 for a total of 22. And unfortunately, our buddy the bandit captain's AC is only 17, meaning both claws hit, allowing the bear to latch on, grapple him, and deliver its bite attack against a held opponent, which lowers that opponent's armor class to its touch AC, making it even easier to hit. With the 2 claw attacks, the bear deals a d6 plus 5 each, rolling a 5 and a 3, then adding its strength to each for a total of 18. Then it delivers its bite attack, rolling a 14 and adding 7 for a total of 21, which hits against the captain's touch AC of 12. It again rolls a d6, getting only a 2, but still adding the plus 5 for its strength and inflicting a further 7 points of damage. So altogether, with 2 claws and a bite, the bear has dealt 25 points of damage to the bandit captain, who, after Creech's spear in his ass, only had 23 hit points left. Well, at least the bear won't go hungry anymore, right? In the process of all this, I should mention that our druid, Emery, was forced to roll a reflex save in the attempt to hang on as the bear stood up to take its swipes against the captain. Now, given the fact that she is riding bareback... Oh, come on, you didn't really think I was going to let that one go, did you? I mean, it was right there. And under Section 216, Paragraph 7 of the Gen X Guy Code, I was practically required to act. But anyway, with little to grab hold of, I set the DC to hold on at a very challenging 20. Emery rolls a 13 and adds her +1 reflex for a total of 14, which isn't good enough. And so she finds herself tumbling to the muddy ground. Next up in the order would be the Dark Lady, but she simply maintains a watchful eye tending to her wounded soldiers. Okay, finishing out the initiative track at this point would have been Bandit Fighters 5 and 6. However, the entire bandit troop has just been treated to the sight of their brave captain being mauled by a giant bear, which is quite obviously allied with their opponents. I'd say it's time we revisit that morale score, wouldn't you? So, as we saw before, the troop's score began at an unshakable 13. But then, after meeting new opponents and seeing this table starting to turn, we shaved that down to an 8. Still steady, but not quite so confident anymore. Well, now we can make a couple more adjustments, subtracting 3 for the loss of their captain and another 2 for the presence of a terrifying monster on the field, which now leaves us with a very shaky score of just 3. A few rolls later, with varying degrees of failure, the best failed by 3 and is seeking to bargain, while the worst, which included all but one other, failed by 7 or more and have thrown down their weapons. We find our remaining bandits in full surrender and seeking terms. And that's where we're going to leave you for this episode. When we return, we shall see how our adventurers determined to handle this new situation. So farewell for now, and may all your rolls be nat 20s.